two primary factors include traditional opponents. So, of course, they're going to protect the traditional rivalries, and then the balance of schedule strength, which leads to the next bullet point, which clarifies their approach here. It was based on each school's conference winning percentage over the last 11 football seasons. It says 2012, so 12 through 22 would be 11 football seasons. So my first thought is, how much of these programs changed in regards to their success on the field in 10 or 11 years? So as it turns out, for me personally, I didn't have an issue with this. Auburn was a much stronger program then, but certainly have the ability to improve considerably here. Florida was a much better program 10 years ago, but again, they've only had a down 2 seasons. They certainly are well equipped, maybe not necessarily with their head coach. The jury's still out on Billy Napier in particular, but with facilities, recruiting, and everything that they have at their disposal. So I didn't see a huge issue with this, and they did the same with Oklahoma and Texas. However, this is almost taking a page from the NFL scheduling model in terms of a formula of weighting it toward successful teams have to play tougher schedules and less successful teams play the weaker end. However, they didn't let that overtake the schedule because they did guarantee that everyone plays 4 opponents from the upper half or the lower half of the schedule. So if you're Vanderbilt and you've got a winning percentage that's probably about 15 or 20% in the conference over the last 10 seasons, you're not going to consistently play the 8 worst teams in the league year after year after year. There is a component to balance out those extremes.
Yeah, I think that's a correct read, and I do think that most of the schedules wound up being very balanced and very reasonable. And to me, the big question this raises is, of teams which either were disappointing in 2023 or 2022, or which went through transitions. Like you look at Auburn as a natural example, total mess under Brian Harsin, but now you get Hugh Freeze, and he's an accomplished coach. I mean, say what you want about his ethics and morality, separate conversation. The dude can coach, and so can he author a year 1 revival akin to what Lincoln Riley did at USC? Not predicting that, I'm just laying it out there as a hypothetical, where if a program that struggled or was a real mess in 2022 suddenly surges in 2023, a lot of these SEC schedule components are going to look different. Like how desirable is it to play Auburn? Like right now it seems relatively desirable, but that could change based on how the Tigers play in the first month of the season. And another really good example, Texas A&M. Where does Jimbo Fisher have the Aggies? And really, to me, that was the #1 story of the SEC schedule release for 2024. And that is that if Jimbo doesn't hit it out of the park in 2024, when's he going to do it? Because he is not going to get an SEC schedule as favorable as that 2024 release. And just in terms of the politics, like this was Sankey in the SEC's way of throwing Texas A&M a bone for allowing Oklahoma and Texas to come into the conference, right? I think most people would agree on that. But Texas A&M better feast at the table, having been thrown this bone, because not playing Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Oklahoma, okay, so here we go, Jimbo. You better make something of this. You better be able to win at least 10 and probably 11. And of course, now this is where I'm briefly going to put on my USC hat. All right. If we compare USC's 2024 schedule to Texas A&M's 2024 schedule, precisely because A&M's SEC schedule is largely bereft of the high-end SEC heavyweights, there's no argument, there's no debate. If either team goes 11-1, that's you're making the 12-team playoff. But 10-2, right? 10-2 is going to be that Mendoza line, 50-50. If you get that record, are you in the 12-team playoff or not? That's going to be the middle ground where you might get into some really tense, contentious arguments. Well, because Texas A&M's 2024 schedule all right, you have Notre Dame there, but then the SEC schedule is really a lot lighter than it could have been, or one could say should have been. If USC and Lincoln Riley go 10-2 in 2024, and Jimbo and A&M also go 10-2 in 2024, it's clear USC will get into the playoff first. I mean, maybe Texas A&M gets in, but USC will be first in line if those two teams are involved in a 10-2 dispute for a 2024 at-large berth in the college football playoff. USC will definitely get first in line if the Trojans and the Aggies both have the same record. So, hey, Jimbo, I would strongly advise that you go 11-1 in 2024 if you want to have a long-term successful career in College Station. First off, because if you're 10-2, you're probably not getting in. And if you're probably not getting in 2024, well, the SEC schedules you're going to face in 2025, 6, 7, 8 they're all going to be tougher than this one, because you just got the jackpot in 2024. So Jimbo Fisher, 2024 is really going to be an if not now, when type of season in College Station.
So I don't think that anyone with half of a brain for college football would argue that this is a weak schedule in comparison to schedules across the country. But for an SEC schedule, I'm right there with you, Matt. I did not look at this specifically. I don't remember looking at Texas A&M's schedule. Who's the best program in the conference? Well, it's Georgia currently. There's no Georgia. There's no Alabama. So right out of the gate, I wonder how many teams are missing both of them. It's got to be very few.
Yep. It has to be very few. I haven't done the research, but it has to be very few. Like LSU is the best team on that schedule. Period.
Now,
like
I'm not saying that Tennessee has established itself as a power, but who was the third best team in the SEC last year? Or arguably the second best team in the SEC? Well, it was Tennessee. They're not there. So you could argue that they're missing the three best teams in the conference, at least as it currently stands.
You're missing 3 of the top 4. With and LSU is the one of the top 4 that landed on the schedule. Yes, it's just a remarkably favorable schedule. Now, wow. I mean, not to say, and of course, not to say for any Florida Gator fans that, like, going to Gainesville is going to be, piece of cake, but it's the non-Alabama, non-Georgia, non-Tennessee part of it. That's what we're all focusing on, to avoid all 3 of those. So, Jimbo, you want to earn all that oil money that's been flowing your way the past several years? Well, 2024, time to deliver, baby.
Yeah, and 2024 is going to be a, 8th season for Jimbo Fisher? So if he has not delivered by then.
Yep. I mean, if he goes 8-4 against that, I mean, he's done, right? He has to be done if he goes 8-4 in 2024, after presumably not doing anything particularly special in 2023. One would have to think that's it. You're gone.
And again, based on my evaluation, if somebody was running into the schedule in the ACC, that would be different. Those
totally different. Yeah,
they're all quality. They're all quality, capable, talented programs. But they're all almost all of them are mid-tier or lower tier SEC outside of LSU.
And the fact that you will have a 16-team SEC, which is supposed to be bigger and better and badder than ever, and you're missing all those programs in the top tier, it's going to become that much more conspicuous how favorable this schedule really is, which concurrently it ramps up the pressure on Jimbo to really deliver something special. And by special, again, we mean 11-1, because if he's 10-2, that's going to put A&M toward the back of the line. Might not eliminate them, but it's certainly going to put the Aggies in the back of the line behind a potential 10-2 USC, 10-2 Michigan, which is playing USC in the Big Ten in 2024. So like, because the Big Ten is going to be souped up, like that's another plot point where if you're 10-2 in the SEC, well, you better have at least one heavyweight win in the mix if you're going to get one of those at-large berths in the 12-team playoff. The window is clearly more narrow for A&M in 2024 if it goes 10-2. It's going to be in the back of the line relative to other blue bloods. or I should say relative to blue bloods, not other blue bloods, because A&M isn't a blue blood. I had to catch myself there.
Not currently, not historically. And
Yeah.
if you believe in the semantics that I do, if you're not historically, then you aren't currently. Clemson being an example, they could win 20 national championships in a row, at least based on my definition. I'm not saying it's the only definition, but if you're not a blue blood at any point, they're elite. Clemson's elite or has been elite, but I don't consider them a blue blood because they have not historically been elite since the days of black and white and leather helmets. The Amazon link's in the description section, folks. It doesn't cost you a penny. Please use the Amazon link and help us grow the voice of college football. So, Matt, we've got about 40 to 45 minutes, folks. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. You can give us a call. And while we're waiting on calls, I'm going to deliver this one to you, Matt, because this war is being waged in the chat currently. It's waged many times when we talk scheduling concerning the SEC. I see it all the time. I've addressed it. I'd like to get your take. The SEC proponents will say, we don't need to play 9 games. Our league is the best. There's a gap above everybody else. Why would we need to play a more difficult schedule? We also already play the toughest teams in America. The detractors, critics of the SEC would say, you need to play 9 games. There are schools like Kentucky that has that default game against Louisville. They play 3 cream puffs. You need to get with the program, with the rest of college football, play 75% of your games in the league, like the Pac-12, like the Big 12, like the Big 10, and join the rest of us. There needs to be uniformity. What say you?
I mean, I started writing about college football back in 2001 for College Football News. Over the past 22 years, like it's as sure as the sun rises in the east, SEC cream puff scheduling, SEC non-conference scheduling has been a centerpiece topic for me when I write about college football during the season. So here's the thing. And, 20 years ago when I was starting out in this business, like I was directing all my ire toward the SEC. Like, you bunch of cowards. Like, you think you're the best. You think you're the whole deal. You think you're the center of the universe in college football. Play more people. Travel outside your region. Why are you such cowards? But then in like the last several years, with the advent of the playoff, with the advent of more high stakes games and just the increasing television money, the conferences expanding, realignment having its way, you realize as you get older, this is not charity. All right, you're not supposed to make things harder on yourself just to make everyone else in the room feel better. You're here to win. You're here to make money. This is the game. This is how it's played. And so we can call the SEC cowards all we want, but the titles keep flowing. The money keeps being made. Like, if it's working, why would you deviate from it? And here's really the big point, is that college football, college sports just doesn't have good, if any, central governance. So like, there's no person there to say and enforce, you have to do this. You have to be in line with everyone else. There's no one to say or enforce any kind of principle which says, oh, all Power 5 conferences have to play the same amount of conference games. There's no one there to say it. There's no one there to do it. So if you're the SEC, why would you go up to 9? And you're just going to laugh at the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the Pac-12 and say, hey, no one was forcing you to play 9. All y'all could have just played 8. Well, we're just going to walk away with national championship after national championship. We're going to keep getting 2 teams into the playoff. We're going to keep just loading up. And hey, when the 12-team college football playoff begins, all your berths belong to us. All the prizes, we're just going to keep, just bringing them in at the poker table. Like, you did not have to do things the way that you did them. The SEC is going to tell everyone else, and the SEC is going to be correct. So unless or until there's like an enforcement mechanism, there's a central governing force or authority that mandates the SEC to have to fall in line with everyone else? Really, if you are the SEC, why would you do that? What you're, just to appease other people and massage their feelings? Like, that's not what this is about. So, like, hey, it is cowardly, all right? Like, don't get me wrong. It is cowardly for the SEC to say, it just means more. And then, well, we don't want to play 9 games in our conference. That's going to be too difficult. So, like, I'm on board that train emotionally, intellectually, but you can't say, well, how awful it is that the SEC is doing this. The SEC shouldn't be allowed to do this. Well, maybe the SEC shouldn't be allowed to do this, but who's going to do that enforcement? Who's going to, make that a binding legal contractual reality? There's no one there. So if you're the SEC and you're an SEC fan, you're sitting here just laughing all the way to the bank, and I can't blame you. Like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So that's really where we are, right? Like, yes, aesthetically and in terms of the quality of the product, it's bad. But if you're the SEC, really, why would you change? Why would you break up something that's been working so handsomely, so magnificently for a very, very long period of time?
Yeah, Matt, you're taking up what's been my talking point for a long, long time, because these conference commissioners are employed by the conferences to do what is best for the conference, which is pretty much twofold if you really want to break it down. It's more complicated than this, but it comes down to make the most money and field the best product, or skew or take advantage of whatever rules exist or don't exist to lean the field in your favor. And so that's what Greg Sankey's doing, and others that want an 8-game conference schedule. It's similar to me as the Notre Dame situation. I want Notre Dame to be in a conference. I believe Notre Dame should be in a conference. Do I blame Notre Dame? No. They are doing what they are allowed to do.
Totally. That's right. Like, who wouldn't want to see Notre Dame in the Big Ten playing Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin? Like, there's such a natural, obvious fit. Would be great for college football and the regular weekly quality of games, instead of playing Marshall, whom, it couldn't even beat last year, nudge, nudge. But like, Notre Dame's able to build in so many schedule breathers, being able to just do carte blanche with its schedule. And, that rubs me the wrong way. But if you're Notre Dame, why would you give that up? Why would you give up the money? With all the money's coming just into your pot, you're not sharing it with any other conference, really, why would you walk away from that if you're Notre Dame? There's no good reason to.
One other point before we take this call. Do the math, folks. When the SEC does not play that 9th conference game, they are playing cream puffs all over the place, typically. Now, let's be fair and let's be honest. There are 4 designated rivalries for the SEC Eastern Division teams: Georgia, Kentucky, Florida, South Carolina against the ACC. Many of them, I would say 3/4 of the time, I think I would be accurate, typically schedule a second Power 5, as Georgia did last year, Georgia Tech plus Oregon. So they typically load up with a second game, but much of the conference does not. So I would say probably 25 to 33% of the conference does play that second Power 5 game, but most of them do not. And so if you take that 16, what is going to be now 16 teams that play the cream puff game, they're winning all those games. Maybe they go 15-1, and typically that one is Vandy losing to Middle Tennessee. So that's inconsequential anyway, because they're not going to a bowl game. So instead of that 15-1 or 16-0, they all play each other. They go 8-8. So the league is losing 7 to 8 wins throughout the league. I'm looking at you, Missouri, because you've gone 6-6 or 5-5 in the COVID season, like 3 consecutive years. You have reached the bowl game basically because you've not played an additional conference game. So there is 1 or 2 SEC teams that slip into a bowl game because of not playing a 9th conference game.
Oh, it's the tried and true formula, right? Go 2-6 in the SEC, go 4-0 in your non-conference slate because you get 4 non-conference bites at the apple. Like, that's been a tried and true path for mid and lower tier teams in the SEC. And so again, like if that's not being regulated out of the sport, and you're in that lower part of the food chain in the SEC, again, why would you deviate from that? Why would you break from that? Another point to mention here is that even for the programs in the SEC that do play an extra Power 5 opponent, like the Georgia, Oregon, and I'm not blaming Georgia here, but this is just points to how it reinforces how smart the SEC is in terms of maximizing dollars and victories. When the SEC plays that extra Power 5 opponent, it's almost always on favorable or at least neutral turf. Alabama playing USC or Michigan in Arlington. It's not gonna have the smaller partisan crowd there. Georgia playing Oregon in Atlanta. For all intents and purposes, a home game. You can technically call it neutral site all you want. That was a Georgia home game. It's like the SEC usually puts its teams in favorable situations. But of course, next year, 2024, LSU going to Vegas to play USC. Like, now that is an exceptional moment. That is an unusual moment with Las Vegas now joining Arlington, Jerry World, and Georgia, Atlanta, the Georgia Dome, or Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I meant to say, with Las Vegas now becoming another one of these early season neutral site games. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the home of the Raiders. One would think that SoFi Stadium is also going to become a site for early season neutral site games, with more Western venues entering the picture for Labor Day weekend and these early September neutral site games. It's going to be fascinating to see how that equation changes for the SEC and for other Power 5 programs. But to this point in time, the SEC, even when it does stick its neck out a little, like not a lot, but a little, and it plays an extra Power 5 opponent in a neutral setting, it's almost always in a favorable turf situation for the conference. And then the league has just been very smart, very tactical in terms of how it handles those kinds of considerations.